Right. I think we are live. I hope everybody can hear us and see us. This is welcome to the book launch of War Party, written by Greg Ardé, my good friend, who I hope you can see as well. War Party: How the ANC's Political Killings Are Breaking South Africa. That's the title of the book. Thank you very much to Tafelberg for publishing Greg's book, and thank you very much to Daily Maverick Insider for hosting this book launch in these strange times. No free wine and sandwiches and mingling, but hopefully we can see a few old friends and learn about more about the state of the nation, the rather bleak state of the nation that is set out in Greg's book. Greg, for those who haven't read it, or the synopsis or the pre-publicity, just tell us a little bit about what the book is all about.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you so much, and thank you to everybody who's attending and to Maverick for hosting this. Yeah, Sam, in a nutshell, it's a book about murder and injustice. It's about how close we are to a gangster state. I don't want to say that the book is about political violence, because people are desensitized to that, and when you say political violence, they just gloss over. And factionalism and enrichment seems a bit remote. But at the core, it's a story about heartbreak and indignity. Political violence can be a complicated knot, but I've tried to hone in on a few stories that are emblematic of the political violence in KZN, and the story broadly, what it portends for South Africa. That's it in a nutshell.
Okay, it's a book and a set of stories that comes out of your history as a journalist in KwaZulu Natal. But tell us a bit about why you wrote this book, and some of the cases that you deal with that kind of signify or typify the problem that you talk about, the heartbreak and the indignity. Tell us a bit about why you got into this.
Yeah. So I've covered violence in KZN since 1993, and I just found it horrific the way it morphed, or it has morphed from political massacres between party supporters to assassinations within the ANC. I found that quite terrifying. It's an indictment of the ANC, but the book isn't political analysis. You can get overwhelmed trying to understand the factionalism and the virtuous. I wrote stories about, to hone it down, I wrote stories about people like Elizabeth Nkleko, 13-year-old girl who was shot dead in front of her classmates in a town called Ngutu because of corruption, and an ANC whistleblower who tried to do the right thing. I wrote about a young man, Tutuko Nkwanyana, who was shot dead in front of his family at his front gate in a place called New Germany, in a suburb of Durban, and because his dad had flagged dubious municipal contracts. There's 27 chapters in the book, and most of them are dedicated to individual stories like that.
And tell us a little bit more about those two cases. Let's start with Makaka, because one of the things that really struck me reading the book is firstly, it goes into the small towns in KZN that don't get coverage, in our shrinking media environment. But it also then exposes just how intertwined crime and business and politics is in those small towns, and then how easy it is to victimize and pick off the people who do stand up against that. So maybe just give us a taste of that by telling the story of those two.
The story, Elizabeth and Clerco, I mentioned that story, and it takes place in a village called Ngutu. That's typical of the story. The stories that don't generally make the headlines. So everyone will remember Sidiso Matata from Mzimkhulu, the ANC fellow who was murdered in Mzimkhulu, but they weren't in Clerco. And that story was just heartbreaking. So there was a fellow called Vuzumusi Ntombela, who was the ANC speaker in Ngutu, and by all accounts tried to do the right thing and stood up against corruption in Ngutu. And a hitman comes into his classroom in Ngutu and talks to him at the chalkboard, and then kills him. And then in crossfire kills Elizabeth and Clerco and injures another pupil. And what was interesting or disturbing about that story was that the hitman, it comes up in court that the hitman is ordered by a local who ingratiates himself with the ANC, or the ANC find a reason to utilize his services, and they draw him from a group involving acting against stock theft. Anyway, he's somehow linked to a local security company, and it seems that Vuzumusi was killed because he had flagged issues relating to tenders for security. Anyway, the chap who does the actual hit, he was arrested, and the fellow who commissioned it, and they were linked to the ANC leaders in that area. And God, it's one sort of injustice foisted upon another. I interviewed Vuzumusi's brother, and he said, it was so frustrating that the family were ostracized after the killing, and they tried to get justice, but they didn't. But they followed the court cases of the two guys involved, and apparently there was a city or a lawyer from out of town who represents taxi bosses, and he was paid to represent the guy called Kumbula, who commissioned the killing. These guys are both in prison, but the point is that the family tried to get the cops to probe it, to look into the security contracts, and didn't. And then at Vuzumusi's funeral, the family are made to go through a security barrier, and the very security company that's involved it doesn't bar them, but has a barrier, provides a barrier to mourners at the funeral, and then they let off a gun salute, and the family were just devastated by that, just the indignity of that, and it just talks to local power networks and patronage, and a guy dying and paying for his life, and then an innocent child, a whistleblower paying with his life, and an innocent child killed in the crossfire.
Greg, tell me a bit more about the process of writing the book and why you wrote this book. I know you got a small advance, but I also know that you dipped into your bond to keep going. It's been a labor of love. It's also been an amazing journey. And I'd like you to tell a little bit about some of the instances. One of the things that is interesting to me, as in my experience as a journalist, is what is really important to getting people to tell you, to talk to you as a journalist, is to be trustworthy, to be the kind of person that you're a young woman's mother would not mind her daughter bringing home, and you've somehow used that trustworthiness to talk to the most terrifying characters. So maybe talk a little bit about that process.
Yeah. As you well know, Sam, I found it at times so frustrating and so exhausting to get to the right people and to try and get to the heart of the stories. And I'm often reminded of what you said once, or I'm sure you said it. Journalism is an investment in time, and it took so long to find people and often to win their trust and to journey around the countryside, often not knowing what you're going to find, but the heart-wrenching tales that people told and were so moving, and I kind of felt honor bound I felt bound to honor the stories of some of the people who have been violence, and to acknowledge the heartache of their families, and it's just I felt like it was a story that a few dogged journalists have followed and a few whistleblowers know about, but I felt like it had to be pulled together in an accessible way, in the hope that it would go some way towards ending this, the violence that continues now.
So tell us a little bit about the structural effect of these killings, because although you tell isolated stories, what you're really describing is a system where violence is part of the political fabric. It's part of the cost and benefit equation. Tell us about the effect of the killing.
It's devastating. I mean, it's devastating at a human level, but it also paralyzes democracy. So people are smitten in a blast of gunfire, and families are gutted, and whistleblowers are silenced. And it's easy to be distracted by the numbers, because the numbers speak to scale. And I do try and give a bit of context for that. Although other more qualified people have kept tabs on the numbers. I mean, Mary DeHaas, a violence monitor, she's recorded more than 4,000 political murders since '94. A guy called Mark Shaw wrote a fabulous book, For Hire. He recorded 500 hits across South Africa between 2000 and 2016. Those numbers are staggering. I kept a spreadsheet telling taxi killings just last year, and there were over 50 people. And you tend to get distracted by the numbers, and I always had to remind myself that it was about the people. It was about Christian Woodrum from a guy from Dundee who was murdered for raising questions about dodgy council deals. Talk about numbers doesn't honor Vusi and Tumbela. But the effect of the violence is that it intimidates. Witnesses disappear or they refuse to testify, and it throws a blanket over the vital workings of government, where there should be transparency. As I said, it paralyzes democracy.
And how can we intervene to change that? How can we stop the killings, or at least make the price that people consider they might have to pay a bit higher? How can we, because it seems like it's entrenched now.
I got the sense that the culture the ANC culture has to change. At the moment, it's primed for greed and patronage and to suit the heavies. Professor Paul Zulu is an academic based in KZN. He describes it as the culture of blood. So the barriers to entry in politics are so low, and yet the stakes are so high. And our politics is not about public service; it's about self-service. And if you have a mercenary mindset, then murder for money is the way things are done. So that culture has to change. Not sure how it changes, but the people best suited to change it, the people best placed to change it are ANC comrades. And then I think as civil society and as journalists, we can put pressure on put whatever pressure we can to shine a light of transparency on public spending. That's where
and on the political players who often behind it or know what's going on.
Yeah.
Greg, in terms of the mechanics, because this is quite an interesting part of the picture that you unfold, is who the killers are and how they fit into kind of other violence networks, particularly around the taxi industry. So we have this kind of meshing of local business, politics, the taxi industry, and murder for hire. Who's actually doing the killings? Tell us about those people.
Yeah, the Nkabi are doing the killings. I interviewed a man.
Explain Nkabi.
Yeah. So Nkabi is the Zulu word for hitman. And this one chap I interviewed was he put it so succinctly. I nicknamed him the cockeyed killer. He was a menacing looking dude. He was visibly scarred from gunshots, and he'd spent a decade in jail, and he got all impassioned during our interview. He was also involved in the taxi industry and an ANC member. And he bellows at me, and he says, "We all know who the Nkabi are." So he repeated what many people had told me during my research. The killers are known. If I had a buck for every time someone said Nkabi and taxi industry in the same sentence, I'd be a millionaire. I interviewed Becky Cele, the police minister, and there's a chapter dedicated to that interview. And he spoke candidly about the Nkabi. The Nkabi are incubated in the taxi industry, but they aren't the exclusive instruments of the taxi industry. So they get hired by a taxi boss to whack a rival, and then by bank robbers who need a shooter, and by a politician who needs to intimidate an opponent, or by a spurned lover wanting to get even. It's a breed of people readily available for murder. I went to a place called Msinga. It's deep in the hills of KZN. It's where many of the Nkabi apparently hide. And you only have to go there to realize how vast KZN is and how easy it is to hide. And a man there described to me how feral youngsters gravitate to this Nkabi business. The young men are called Isishimani. It's apparently a derogatory term for men who don't have roots and who can't even get a wife. And they're always distracted and prowling, and they aren't socially anchored. And these are the guys who are seduced by power of this underworld. They're the Nkabi, and they multi-purpose, as it were. So anyone worried about crime should worry about violence, political violence, and violence in the taxi industry, because it's the same as involved.
And if if as you say, people know who's involved on a broad level, why have there been so many convictions? Why aren't the police catching them? And especially when one or two people on the ground get caught, it seems like some of the bosses, some of the people giving the orders and paying the bills are not caught. Talk a bit about the policing of this problem.
Well, I think it's a number of things, Sam, and it's multi-layered, but the sense that I got was that some of the hitmen are good at their jobs. There's one story in the book about a guy who's thankfully behind bars, who his name comes up in a court case, and so to relate the incident, what happens in court, the judge, he was apparently an excellent marksman. So the judge talks about his abilities as a sniper, and the guy starts to talk, but then he thinks a bit of it and he shuts up. So when most of the killers are caught, they say nothing. I interviewed a couple of prisoners, and they say that the silence means you'll be looked after in prison, and your families will be taken care of on the outside. And but if you don't, you'll end up dead, or your kin will be killed. So when I started the book, I was really quite contemptuous of the police, but I came across some brilliant cops fighting a lonely battle at great personal cost. They are up against a heartless breed of men. But having said that, in spite of their efforts, I didn't get a sense that the police had mind mapped the problem. Too many cops said that their colleagues were beholden to the industry. And one veteran said, he said that the taxi industry is like a big flashing neon sign that everyone is ignoring. The taxi industry transports most people around every day. The annual turnover is something like 90 billion. And it's like church money, Behikele said. Church money, the taxman never sees it. And that cash offers huge power to manipulate. Taxis move guns and money and probably a lot more. And the money can be used to silence witnesses, to buy prosecutors and magistrates. And I don't think enough has been done to understand who the big players in the taxi business are, and the private security firms that serve the taxi industry. There are high-profile cases where the cops have acted against the big guns. But my sense, and that of many of the people that I spoke to, is that the data isn't being pulled together and mapped and analyzed on a macro level. I think the connections run deep.
Yeah, so a lot of cash, a countrywide transportation network, access to men with guns, the private security industry. And as you say, it seems like the police, the state, crime intelligence are often high-ranking people implicated. A lot of police, I imagine you will have discovered, themselves own taxis. But I think at a higher level, the links between politicians and top policemen and the taxi bosses, people are not digging into that. I think you write in the book about the example of Durban and the Durban Transport Corporation. Can you say a little bit about that and the famous Gaba family?
Well, the Gaba family has a very controversial contract to run the bus service, and that's been widely panned for good reason. It was never put out to tender. But so the sense I get of the situation insofar as Durban is concerned, I mean, I wrote a story not so long ago where an MP called for a commission of inquiry into the whole transport industry, the public transport industry in Durban. So they are creating a public thing called Go Durban, and it seems that there are so many vested interests in the transport. Well, it's a lucrative business. It's a very lucrative business, and it seems, my impression is that it's been carved up. The work's been carved up to suit some place, yeah, I just don't think there's enough scrutiny on that, and I don't know if I answered your question, Sam.
No, that's fine. Tell us a bit about what it was like delving into the taxi industry, and one of the other things that fascinates me about Greg's ability to find contacts sort of across a wide social and class network is he goes to a very down and out gym where other people, or maybe it's not down and out, but among the patrons are cops and taxi industry guys and so on, where I think some of your leads have come from. So tell us a bit about delving into the taxi industry.
Well, I felt it feels like I felt often that I was just sort of bumbling along, to be honest, Sam. But it's amazing how one sort of lead opens another, and one door opens another, and sort of go down that road. And the taxi industry, yeah, I mean, I met some real characters in that process, but it's quite a scary and secretive world, and it really is a mafioso business. So there's a chapter in the book. I mean, I speak to a range of taxi guys in the book for the book. But I mean, the one thing that struck me was that I arranged to meet this guy, and instead of sort of meeting him at the back of a rank, he says that gives me this address in Mshlanga, and it's a really plush hotel, and this chap's dressed up immaculately, and he's holding court like a real mafia don, and the security is incredible, and it's in a hotel with no road frontage and whatever, and yeah, he that fellow was equally impassioned. He was as impassioned as the other bloke I referred to. But you get a sense of how much money and power and is in this world. But so the overriding thing there is that it's a secretive business. It's a secretive business, and it's a highly contested business, and there's so much money and so much at stake. So there's so much brute force in there, and probably.
There's obviously it's a very macho industry. There's a lot of testosterone, but you tell one story about I think it's a fairly small town, a female policewoman who kind of managed to win the respect of the the local taxi industry and the local taxi boss. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah. It's a classic tale, and it kind of talks to how the cops develop, the de facto response to these you know, these testosterone bunnies. This policewoman tells me the story of how her colleague gets drawn into the taxi business. He was apparently, you know, really good at his job, but he got involved with, and was shot dead as a result. So the local taxi boss approaches this woman cop, and he comes into his office while the bodyguard stands outside with an Uzi. And the taxi boss says to her, he says to this woman cop, "We'll buy you a taxi. It'll pay for itself, and all you have to do is play ball." And she says, in a split second, she realizes that if she doesn't make herself absolutely clear, she also ended up dead. So she whips out her pistol and points it directly between the taxi boss's eyes and says in very colorful idiomatic Zulu that she won't be drawn into this nonsense. And apparently the guy, you know, freaked out and you know, totally got her. So, but the interesting thing, this policewoman has a sterling reputation. She's known for brain over brawn. But she had to make this gangster understand unequivocally that she wasn't up for sale, or she said she'd end up dead. And that's what the cops are dealing with. You know, big bullies with big guns. And often the cops on the ground don't get the right support from the brass. A very colorful sort of world, I suppose.
Yeah, it's also a bewildering world. When you know, when I read it, there's a parade of victims and perpetrators and crooks and cops, you thread it all together, but it's you know, the detail and the characters and so on, pretty hard to make sense of and weave into a narrative. How did you feel writing the book? You've written a couple of biographies before, but I think this is the first, you know, big serious topic that an investigation that you've tackled as a book.
Yeah, Sam, I felt like I was trying to navigate an enormous warren of tunnels. There's so many murders, so many conspiracies, so much intrigue, and you know, some people, non-Zulu speakers, might find the names quite hard going at times, but there is a, you know, index. But there's so much to it, and it seems so complicated. And I kept on hoping I would find the smoking gun, you know, the master behind, you know, maybe many of the killings. That's, I realized, the simplistic. I did find the murderous networks were crisscrossing, and there were vested interests, and I'm still mining them. But at another level, it's just a tragic and disturbingly similar story playing out in little towns across the province. So as much as I tried to get a helicopter view, I would get drawn into the individual stories, and then I had to remind myself I'm not trying to solve murders. I'm here to tell the stories. I realized in the process that not only the good guys are killed, and not only the bad guys are in power. You know, at the end of the day, I try to understand it all, and I was reminded the other day of I read somewhere that the job of an author journalist is not about answering all the questions. It's about asking many difficult questions. So I just tried to pull it all together, but in the process, you know, who knows how successful I was, but I hope
talking of asking difficult questions, we will leave time for quick Q&A. So please, I'm not sure if I'm going to master the technology, but please, people who are watching and want to ask questions, put them through on the list and Nicole will prompt me if I miss good questions, and we'll get to that pretty soon. Greg, in the meantime, the elephant in the room, and it's identified squarely on the front, front cover of the book, is the ANC, the party. This book is very critical of the ANC. I found, you've said that some people spoke to you privately, but I found the silence of the party in relation to this whole story and your attempts to get some response about this collapse of our body politic, the cancer of violence that's eating away from it. I found that an enormous hole in the book, not because of you, but because the party not taking any kind of responsibility. Is the party beyond redemption? What's your view?
I'd like to say no, Sam. I think because of one thing, I found the willingness of ANC comrades to speak, albeit privately, quite surprising, and they spoke frankly. In fact, the harshest criticism of the ANC comes from within, but only a few really brave comrades are standing up to the criminals who've hijacked their party. Quite how that will play, I don't know. Senzo Mkhunu, the former premier of KZN, said at the Morani Commission, he said, the ANC must accept responsibility. That's the first thing we need to do. We are responsible. But clearly, Senzo's acknowledgement hasn't been widely absorbed.
Yeah, and it's a bit ironic because one of the stories I think is in the book. I hope I'm not remembering something that you've told me rather than that's in the book. But I think it's in the book. Is there's one notorious hitman that the police are looking for, and it appears that he ends up hiding out in the office of the premier to avoid being picked up. Just maybe tell a little bit about that.
So there's the story I really chased after, and again, I mean, that particular story you remember well, Sam. It involves this taxi boss who finds refuge in the government's offices, and it's really the most peculiar thing. And I spoke to cops, and they said, at the time they tried to, what on earth's going on here? But that particular thing spoke to, I thought was, or I went into in the book was what I called the ANC power projects. So the ANC nurtures these heavies, and it turns them around. So there might be a taxi boss, or there might be a former hit squad killer who served time, and then they set up in business, in security, and they're very useful to the ANC, and and you've seen all the recent killings, and it talks to serious firepower, serious bullying and intimidation, because the ANC have incubated, people in the ANC have incubated these heavies, and yeah, they're thoroughly intimidating, and it's completely. I interview this old veteran, anti-veteran, and he in the book, and he says, that's just so at odds with. It's inimical to what we fought for. It's just the very opposite of the struggle for freedom. This militarization of society.
Yeah, I mean, one of the opening chapters is is a very stark illustration of that. Greg takes us to the KZN Midlands, the town of Richmond, where in the pre-democracy war with the Inkatha Freedom Party, the ANC's most feared general, Sifiso Nkabinde, was the boss in town. But then after 1994, Nkabinde became one of the ANC's most feared rivals. He split from the ANC, and therefore he had to be eliminated. And what's amazing about this story is Greg goes back to Richmond and meets Nkabinde's son, and the son knows that it was the ANC that took out his father, but he's made his peace with the party because he's basically tied to Richmond. And in the small town like that, there's no business that can take place without the party. Without the party, there's no business, and he's made his peace with that. So how do we start to untangle this, Greg? How do we try and prize some of the money out of our politics, some of the violence out of our politics? Are there any lessons that you've learned, any networks that you've come across that you think are able to make a difference?
Sam, I don't know. I just got that Richmond story encapsulates it. It's just how the party is everything. It becomes everything. It is the business of the little towns, and a really a glimmer of hope is the attention that like a lonely reporter on a little local gazette, the efforts of that reporter in exposing corruption and I just think that we have to shine the light of transparency on public spending, and we need to, there's so much hand-wringing about, public hand-wringing about directly linked to corruption, and there's so much talk about finding the masterminds and not being distracted by the minions. But I mean, we see so little evidence of that. And I interviewed Advocate Morani after he had released his report, the Morani Commission report, and I asked him the same question, and he said, you've got to make public spending, there's got to be massive transparency. You've got to see who gets the contracts, and then it helps unravel the patronage, the networks of patronage. It helps understand the power play.
Okay, I think we're going to take some questions now, Greg, from Chris Newman, who's watching, and it was a question my wife also asked. Are you fearful of retaliation for yourself after the book? Were there any occasions where you felt, sure, I'm not going to get out of this situation when you were doing your research?
I had a few hairy moments, but honestly, I just think that I got a little taste of what ANC whistleblowers and are experiencing, and the fear that and terror that they live describable. I can't even. I mean, that's really scary. If you're stuck in a little town trying to do the right thing, the bad guys know who you are and what you're trying to do. I got a sense of that terror by speaking to the families and the survivors and whistleblowers. I really you know, I think I got a little taste of it. I've been fine, but you know, I don't live their lives.
There's an interesting question from Pops Rampasad, which also kind of touches on other questions others have asked. He says the forces of good appear to be working in silos. What's your view on reviving or launching an umbrella such as the UDF, to which all progressive organizations can affiliate? This can be extra parliamentary initiative to put pressure on government to deal quickly and decisively against corruption. Your thoughts, Greg?
Sam, I think everybody's looking for an answer, and it might be covered by what Pops is suggesting. I don't feel suitably qualified to answer that. The sense that I got in writing it, and the reaction I've had to the book is that people want a strong, independent media and civil society that can hold the powers that be to account. However, I suppose.
Yeah. On that note, just a short message from our sponsors. There'll be an ability to buy Greg's book, because you can help him carry on with his work by actually making it possible for him to break even on this project. You can also support organizations like amaBhungane and Daily Maverick to keep exposing these kinds of things. Kim Silberman asks, do you see any hope for municipalities? Can they ever regain the ability to govern, or will they be remain dominated by gangsterism? Was there anywhere where that you came across in a small town, or you know, where somebody got it right, somebody turned it around?
Alas, not. I don't know. It seems like, yeah, no. It's a really sad and sorry tale across KZN. There are some valiant efforts by individuals and small groups of people, and I mean, a day doesn't go by when, and I'm sure it's the same in your life, Sam, where you don't get tipped off about an instance of corruption or suspected corruption, and you know, there's only so many people who can look into that. Yeah.
Okay. Bruce Robertson asks, to what extent, if any, has the private security regulatory authority attempted to deal with the private security companies in this environment? Because I think, as you pointed out, there are some of these hitmen who move in and out of the private security industry as well, and you know, the private security industry obviously has a role in protecting us, but in a way they're also players in this war. Any thoughts on that?
Sam, the CIRA is the acronym. They don't cover themselves in glory. Well, certainly all the people I spoke to, and my attempt were not very complimentary, and my attempts to sort of draw them out and get responses on things wasn't rewarded. So I asked Becky that in our interview. I said, are you cross-referencing your databases? I mean, do you have access to the CIRA database, and are you actively engaged around it? And he, I don't know if he was fobbing me off, but he seemed pretty confident of, you know, the liaison, you know, the successful liaison between the two. But I think he did also say, and he became quite animated in this discussion. He said, you know, he says, I'm not critical of all security companies, but he says, you know, we wouldn't have a need for security companies. There's a classic line in the book where I don't want to misattribute what he said, but a lot of people said it's the violence is in part perpetuated by security companies. So they, you know, if there's a perceived threat, then they'll get hired. And And you know, I think there's a figure quoted in the book where when Nene was still finance minister, he answered a question in Parliament, and he said that the government alone spends you have to check the exact. I'd have to find the place in the book. In 1 year, they spent 8 billion alone on private security. That's the government. I mean, this is a massive beast.
The private security industry massively outguns the
police and the army. Yeah.
One would imagine that could be turned to some positive effect. Greg, a good question from Joanne Greenberg. We've got the local government elections coming up, although it looks like they could be postponed. Do you think there's going to be a spree of killing pre next year's municipal elections? People wanting to take control of wards and fight, especially in KZN, over KZN as a whole, and KZN seems to be pretty evenly balanced between two factions, the sort of the New Dawn faction and the old Dirt faction, shall we say? Yeah, how do you see things developing? There've been some recent killings as well. To talk a bit about that. Yeah,
so there's been a spate. I mean, 2 weeks ago, an Umlazi councillor was killed. ANC councillor. I think 2 weeks before that, a councillor was killed in Hammersdale and Mpumalanga, and there was a councillor killed in up the north coast, and then there've been a couple of shootings of ANC aligned Metro cops. So all in all, about 8 people just in the last 6 weeks, and then there've been, I think, as many taxi killings in KZN alone in the same time. Unfortunately, I think there's a sense that things are hotting up, and the people that I've spoken to sort of confirm what it's interesting to see now. At last, I think it's sort of an acknowledgement by the ANC and KZN that how dire the problem is. The provincial secretary was quoted in the paper the other day, and you get frequent reports from the various factions. Well, I'm in touch with them, and they work. The ANC elective conference in eThekwini has to take place. Apparently, it's been repeatedly delayed, and apparently will be held in September. It's jockeying for power, and I have no doubt that some of these killings are directly linked.
Yeah, we've got a question. Has the KZN dynamic fueled actions and events in other provinces? And I know that Mark Shaw, who you mentioned in your introduction, has written about what he calls the kind of the violence economy, and something that we've noted and that you may also have noted is the beginnings of tendrils of networks between the Cape sort of gangster economy and the KZN sort of taxi gangster economy, starting to not to merge, but certainly to have overlaps of interest. It's a scary prospect. What? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah. Sam, it's exactly it. It's a really scary prospect, and I've seen ANC councillors being killed in Limpopo, and then you know, a flare up in taxi violence in the Western Cape now, and you can't help but want to like delve into the stories more and more, and especially to understand the intersect between, you know, drugs, taxis, political killings, and exactly that, you know, economy of what did Mark Shaw call it, economy of murder. It's a business, and it's terrifying.
Greg, there's a lot of groundswell of feeling of people feeling helpless, but also thinking and saying, and some of the questions today as well, you know, what can we do? How can we get involved? Have you come across any networks in doing the research for this book? Community policing forums, violence monitoring, other kinds of networks where there is some kind of way in for people to actually have an influence and try to change the dynamic, the balance of power in the interests of ordinary citizens?
No, not necessarily sort of big networks, but I'm so grateful to the whistleblowers. I'm so grateful to the violence monitors, and they really are lonely souls. And I'm so grateful to my colleagues who, you know, who there's sustained pressure on government and the ANC. There is. I mean, it may not seem like it. It may seem like we're fighting a sort of futile battle, but we're not. I mean, there's a lot of courage, and a strong civil society, and you know, everybody coming out and refused to be cowed, you know, by interrogating a local tender, you know, through your councillor or whatever, or you know, supporting your local media, engaging with your local media, and yeah, I just think I think there's enough. I think people are, you know, they need rallying points. Democracy needs rallying points, and they are there. Yeah, maybe they're few and far between, but they're there.
If we can close on that point, then yes, I think so. Buy Greg's book. It's shocking, but rather than retreat into your shell, if I can just appeal to those of you who are watching still, you know, get angry, get involved, make a difference in whatever way you can. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Sam. Sure. Thank you, everyone.